Howdy, howdy. Sue Devil here, and welcome to the summary video of our infantry testing from 901 gold up in an infantry battle. Now, I put up 3 videos, a top 5, a bottom 5, and the middle 14, and a primer video to show how I did the testing. I want to do a quick summary video to look at the results in as a whole. And I did say in the sort of the 19-6 video is that they stratified pretty well in general from the results. So, and I want to take a look at my initial guess versus the final results. So the final results is sort of here, and what I say by they stratified reasonably is you would expect in an infantry fight great weapon units to finish above, in general, non-great weapon units, but absolutely above their non-great weapon units in the same faction, and above their anti-large units in the same faction. So what I mean by that is exactly this. Chosen with great weapons finish ahead of Chosen, and Chosen finish ahead of Chosen with halberds. So that is stratified correctly, in my view, is that the Chosen with great weapons finish on top, then the Chosen with halberds. And this sort of works in a lot of places. The Swordmasters of Hoeth with our anti-infantry showed up way ahead of the Phoenix Guard, which is the anti-large. Even the dwarfs stratified correctly. Hammers finished ahead of Ironbreakers, which finished ahead of Giant Slayers, and Marauders with great weapons finished ahead of Marauders. And for the most part, this actually worked good. Depth Guard ahead of Depth Guard with polearms. Now, why I mention that is in some of the lower rounds, like in the 400 and under gold, and the 401 to 600, and the 601 to 900, we had odd things happen, like, shielded infantry finishing ahead of non-shielded infantry. We had spearmen finishing ahead of regular infantry, like the Empire spears with shields finished ahead of Empire spears, and ahead of swordsmen in terms of value. That's the opposite of what you want. So anyone playing this game or coming to this game, this actual 901 gold up test for infantry is pretty intuitive, meaning all these units generally do operate as advertised, and you don't get anything really weird happening. They really do work pretty well, and the list has been pretty nice. They stratified very well. Like, there's just nothing here that is really crazy out of bounds in terms of where it is. I mean, you might be able to say the Depth Guard with polearm should probably be at the bottom because they are undead. With the War Dancers with Azrai spears, I mean, you look at stuff like, well, maybe the Wood Elf infantry shouldn't be very good, and generally it isn't, and etc., etc., etc. So now I want to go over my predictions compared to what the final results were, and then I'll do 2 small tests, just some back tests to show that this testing really is not too bad. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not everything. I always give the caveat that this is one piece of the puzzle. There's many ways to understand a unit in context of its army, in context of the matchups, and this is really a pure, no formation, just units fighting units, just smashing them into each other and looking at the results, which is very myopic. It is very singular in its focus, and it gives very basic results. But understanding those results can help you understand the greater context a little bit better, I think. And through all the testing, I think we found some really interesting units. And in general, in here, I had a great comment that said this is the least interesting of all the testing because the units kind of showed up generally where they should. And I almost think it's the most interesting because I expected there to be some weird things, but they did show up correctly. There was none of these weird things happening like down in the lower ranks. I'm quite happy with the results. And we did a ton of testing. We did a lot of testing, and this was really fun. This is the first time I've live streamed anything, and I live streamed the testing because, it's just busy work. I love testing, by the way. I'd do this testing whether I'm YouTubing or not. I've always done this kind of thing with Total War Games. I love it. And I don't know why. I just do. I'm an engineer in real life, so it's something that really makes me happy, doing testing and getting results, taking the data, sort of applied science, right? And Anyways, so I want to go over my initial guess. Like I made my initial guess video like 3 or 4 weeks ago. I can't remember the exact date it was. Yeah, 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. Oh, January 5th, I think. And it's January 30th today, 31st. I don't know. It's getting there. Anyways, when I went through, I've done lots of testing, but I've never really tested everything in context of each other. So I didn't know, but I sort of had a feel where I thought they would show up. I will say, if I look at the differential from where I guessed and where it showed up, meaning the blues are a +1, so I guessed the Swordmaster or the Chosen with Great Weapons would be rank 2. They ended up rank 1, so they ended up one rank higher. I guessed the Swordmasters of Hoeth would be rank 1. They ended up rank 2, so they ended up -1, one rank lower. And I had 3 zeros where they ended up exactly where I thought they would end up, or exactly where I guessed. And then I added up the absolute value of all those, and I took an average. And on average, I was out by about 2.83 ranks. So not too bad, I would think. If I'm saying I'm guessing where all these units show up in relative to each other in the function of an infantry fight, I was out by an average of 2.83 ranks, which I think is pretty reasonable. The most I was out on any one unit was 6 ranks, and I was out on the Phoenix Guard. They went 6 ranks higher than I thought. Storm Vermin were 6 ranks higher than I thought. And Marauder Champions with Great Weapons were 6 ranks lower than I thought they would be. And anyways, I'll go through. First of all, I did have the Swordmasters of Hoeth finishing number 1 and Chosen with Great Weapons finishing number 2. I knew those 2 units would be high and they would do very well. And, I thought the Swordmasters of Hoeth would finish at the top because in a value battle, when you look at value and not just power, you're looking at the gold. And Chosen with Great Weapons are 1,400 gold. They are 150 gold more than the Sword Masters of Hoeth. So they have to be that much more efficient in the fight. And the Sword Masters of Hoeth, with their martial mastery, are really, really strong at trading down. And when I looked at all the units that I tested against, we tested against only the Blades of the Blood Queen where they had to trade up. Otherwise, all 4 of the other units they had to trade down. So I thought that might skew it just enough to allow the Swordmasters of Hoeth to finish first, but they didn't. They finished second. And Chosen with Great Weapons finished first. And there was a lot of you guys were predicting these would, like, Chosen with Great Weapons would finish first. I think more than 2 or 3 of you guys said, yeah, Chosen with Great Weapons, they're going to finish first for sure. And indeed they did. They're very close in either way. And Chosen with Great Weapons, the Swordmasters of Hoeth, they were really 1 and 2 by quite a ways. In terms of when I look at the addition of all the testing, when I look at the final addition, they were 38 and 47, and then 3, 4, and 5 were 95, 100, and 119. And that's an addition of all their scores, sort of through all the testing. I add up their position in each, and we get this score, and then I rank ordered them from there. And they were very close, like 33 and 47. There's not much between them. The Chosen with Great Weapons did finish best, but they were basically finished way ahead of 3, 4, and 5. And then you look at the bottom, they were actually pretty tight, 252 to 306. Like the rest of the rankings were relatively linear, I would say, or relatively close. I think once you get to the top 9 Dwarf, Chaos, Ironbreakers, the top 8, and up, the Ironbreakers and Black Orcs and Hammers were all very close. Just the Besegors just edged them out into that top 5. And so relatively close. Now, I did think the Ironbreakers were going to be at rank 3. Ironbreakers were all the way down at rank 8, so they were -5. And that's sort of my bias, like I said. Chosen actually finished higher than I thought. So Ironbreakers, I thought would finish high for the very reason just regular Chosen did finish high, is they're doing a lot of trading down and they pull a ton of value. Now the Ironbreakers did finish tops in overall value, but they killed everything so slow, this is the dwarf thing. I'm just going to stand there and fight until you just give up or you pass out or I get in a good shot and kill you. Like that is a dwarf way to do it. It is a battle of attrition. I'm just going to fight you until you're dead, and I get really good value in all my fights, and for the most part if I can get the matchup that I like, but it takes a long time. And the Ironbreakers are exactly that unit that In the lore, they are the unit that fights underground against Skaven, against goblins, against all kinds of crazy stuff to protect the cracks. And, they're meant to just hold the line and not move, to be a dwarven wall for anything. And they operate like that. So, and that's my bias. I thought they would be a lot higher, but I really had a good reason to think that they were going to pull good value because I thought their blasting charges would be a little more powerful against clan rats and berserkers, and they weren't as powerful as I thought they would be. So they didn't finish quite as high as they did. So they're quite a bit down. Now I thought Harganeth Executioners were going to finish fourth, even though they weren't going to get their martial mastery or their murderous mastery because it doesn't go off, and they did. So this would tell me that Harganeth Executioners are probably, they need a nerf. When you're finishing that high and you have martial mastery, which is going to go off for 120 seconds, I mean, that is a little bit too high. And you look like the Dark Elves, Dark Elves are a crushing faction. They're so good in all matchups that I don't know if they have any one matchup where they can't win. They're going to be, even though they might, have some problems in some matchups, they're so good is because their infantry is great all around. Actually, we went through and did the testing, and they're great. They're okay, but Harganeth Executioners are unbelievably good. They're outstanding, and really to be up this high without martial murderous mastery, that's probably a little bit OP. Maybe they should show up sort of halfway, right? Kind of, or maybe a little up to maybe top 10. And then when they get their martial mastery, that would, if you include that puts them into the top 5 or the top 3. Sort of that's how I imagine them. But maybe this is where they belong. They are lower than the Swordmasters of Hoeth. And that's sort of the unit they're a lot like, really. They're the anti-large, the anti-infantry armor piercing. And they do show up below the Swordmasters of Hoeth. And they're not getting their murderous mastery. Now, would they be equal if they got that buff for 2 minutes in the fight with the Swordmaster of Hoeth? Maybe they would. So maybe that is correct. I don't know. Anyways, coming in at number 5, I had the hammer. So I had my dwarf units at 3 and 5. I thought the Ironbreakers would pull a lot of value, and I knew the hammers would do good. The hammers are just a solid unit, especially since they would have been about little higher in the middle of the pack before their health buff, but now they're a solid 6th place. Now they finished one rank down than I thought they would, but hammers are still a good unit. Like, they're just solid all around. 1,100 gold's a good price, because you think Black Orcs are 1150, Bestigors are 1050, a lot of units around 1,000 gold. Do I want to have 6 hammers in a fight? Well, maybe. I don't know. But 1 or 2 is almost always, in a lot of matchups, it's good. I mean, unless they bring something to really crush your hammers. But hammers do good. They have a ton of weapon strength, and they're the only dwarf unit that really kills fast, with the exception of Slayers and anti-large functions. But this isn't an anti-large fight. This is an infantry fight. So they finished 1 down from where I thought. Now, Black Orcs, I had them at rank 6. They finished at rank 7. So they finished 1 down as well. So I had hammers and Black Orcs in the correct order. They just both finished 1 down from where I thought they would finish. Black Orcs are just a perennial good unit. They're solid. They have immunity to psychology. They're just a great all-around unit. And I did talk about the animation advantage that they get, which you can almost think of it as a mechanical advantage, meaning they have a lot of reach and they're big. So in this game, your 2 units actually have to hit each other before the hit calculation takes place. So they can hit each other and not do any damage, but if they don't hit each other, they will never do damage, because either their cone has to hit if they can hit multiple things, or their weapon has to hit the actual area, and maybe not precisely pixel to pixel. They're just, imagine it's calculated on an area they're standing, but they actually have to connect. That's why that brings in a lot of randomness into the whole fight. But Black Orcs don't have a lot. Black Orcs don't have a lot of randomness because they hit a lot. They're actually a pretty stable unit, and they're pretty reliable. All right. So Chosen, again, Chosen finished, I thought they were going to finish seventh in my initial guess, and they finished third. Again, they just pull so much value. They have immense stats, and they clean up chaff units without even losing models. Like they cleaned up a lot. They cleaned up a lot without losing a model or losing one or two, and that's it. So they are very efficient in terms of pulling value. Now the Bestigors, I thought the Bestigors would be eighth. I didn't even knew they're good, and they finished in fifth. So like three ranks up from where I thought they were going to finish. And Bestigors, I mean, Bestigors have sort of gone up and down, and apparently when they first came out, Bestigors weren't that good. But I've always seen Bestigors as pretty decent because as the Dowee, I've played a lot against the Beastmen, and you always see Bestigors, and they're good. Like I always see that they're good. They're not world beaters, but they're just a solid unit. And it turns out they're top five in a category this stacked with great units is nothing to sniff at. And a lot of that comes with their cost. Like it's easier to pull value when you don't cost that much, and they did a great job. Now, the unit I thought would show up high is Marauder Champions with Great Weapons at 9, and they showed up all the way down at rank 15. Now, I thought they were going to show up high because they got such a massive buff to their health with the Festag update. They got +4 health, and I think their Marauder Champions with Great Weapons also got some speed. Not that that matters, but really, I thought they were going to show up at rank 9. They showed up down in rank 15, -6, and that was because that was a pure guess, and I really didn't know where they showed up before. I played Norska. I mean, I played against Norska a couple of times. They didn't seem that great before. I didn't know the unit very well, and I've never really tested against it privately. So that was really a pure guess, and it was just out by 6. I mean, that was but my most pure guesses were against the Wood Elves and against the Norska, because I knew those units so little, and a little bit against Skaven. All right, so as far as the Dark Elves, Sisters of Slaughter, I had them at rank 10, and the Sisters finished down at rank 14, so a little lower than I thought. Now, I've seen Sisters against the Dowee, and they're actually, even though they have no armor and they're not armor piercing, they're just good. They're a good unit. They're solid. Even down at rank 14, they're solid. They can get the job done. They're a very interesting unit. I know Witch Elves are, I think, a little bit more interesting in terms of with the ability to rampage things and stuff like that. But Sisters of Slaughter are no joke. Now the second unit I got exactly correct was the Depth Guard. I had the Harganeth Executioners right where they were. The Depth Guard, I had them rank 11, and they finished at rank 11. Now, I've been saying the Depth Guard, I think, got a little bit over nerfed, but maybe not. Like, they're middle of the pack, and they're an undead unit. They have regeneration. This is probably right. The Depth Guard with polearms, they got a +1 melee defense buff in the Festag update. They're probably about where they need to be. They can be healed very easily, and so they could be OP very easily. And pre-launch, they were killers. They were pretty OP. All right, so Skaven, number 12 with the Plague Monk Sensor Bearers is where I thought they would be. The Plague Monk Sensor Bearers actually showed up at rank 13, so I was very close on that. I figured they'd be the top Skaven unit. It was the Stormvermin were the top Skaven unit, but I kind of had them in where they are. Skaven Infantry on this top part, I've never seen them really perform at a high level, with the exception of Death Runners, who have performed quite well, but in a total support role. But I mean, I've seen Stormvermin do pretty well. I don't know why I ranked them so much lower. And Stormvermin with Halberds, I knew wouldn't be great because I've played against them a few times, and people bring them against the dwarfs because they're armor piercing. But boy, oh boy, they sure don't do very good. Okay, so at 14, I had the Marauder Champions, and they actually finished down at rank 18, so I was wrong by 4 that way. Again, a bit of a guess, a total guess. At 15, I had the Lizardmen with the Temple Guard. Now, the Temple Guard actually finished 16, so -1. I felt like they'd be around there, and that's about where they were. I've used Temple Guard before, and I've tested against Temple Guard before too. When the Lizardmen first came out, I did some testing against Temple Guard, so I knew they were good. And I'm good in an infantry fight for a anti-large unit. Now, the Phoenix Guard was one of my big surprises. I had them at rank 16. They finished all the way at rank 10, and it was among one of my biggest mistakes. And I haven't used Phoenix Guard, and the thing is, I've played against High Elves a few times. You don't see Phoenix Guard, obviously, because the High Elves have Swordmaster of Hoeth, and they also have White Lines or Trace. You're never going to see Phoenix Guard, so I never really fought against them. You will see Temple Guard sometimes in a match against the Lizardmen as the dwarfs, because people will bring them, like Storm Vermin with halberds, because they don't have any armor piercing, with the exception of their big monsters like Croxagors, but stuff like that. But anyways, Phoenix Guard, I was surprised. Very solid unit. Really, really good. I mean, they're expensive. 1,400 gold is a lot, but they pull the value if you let them pull it. And I can imagine they're really, really good in their... and they have charge defense against all. I imagine they're really good for high elf players who do use them in the right situations. I had Blackguard of Nagaron right behind them. And Blackguard and Nagaron actually showed down at number 21. I had them at 17. They showed up at 21 -4. So they were actually quite a bit worse than I thought they would be. And it's interesting is the Swordmasters of Hoeth and the Harganeth Executioners were only 2 apart. And the Phoenix Guard and the Blackguard and Nagaron were, we're talking like 11 apart. So maybe that's telling me the Blackguard of Nagaron needs a bit of love. Now, I would think it would be reasonable to remove, 2 melee attack from Harganeth Executioners and give the Blackguard and Nagaron +2 melee defense, sort of like to bring them closer to where they should be, because I did say I thought Harganeth Executioners would need a little bit of a nerf, but I do think Blackguard and Nagaron need a little bit of a buff, because they should be around 17, 16, kind of in there. They really should be kind of around that area, and they're not, and then they can use their Murderous Mastery. All right, I had the Storm Vermin actually at 18, and this was another big mistake. They ended up at 12. So you do see Storm Vermin, and I think they do okay. They're not great. They're not going to be the heroes. They're not going to be the dogs. They do all right. At 19, I had the Depth Guard with Polearms. They were down at 21, so I was off by Depth Guard with Polearms. I was off by 3. At 20, I had Death Runners, and that was my third and final exact correct guess. I didn't know where Skaven, I'd had no inside information. I did not know where they were going to show up. This was a pure guess on my part, and it's pure luck that they showed up right there. Like the Harganeth Executioners and the Depth Guard, I thought about it, and I think, I knew I would be close, but the Death Runners, I had no idea. That was a pure guess, and I just got lucky. But they finished 20 out of 24, and sort of that is, by the sounds of it, from what all you guys have been saying in the testing, is that's about where they should show up. They're a real support unit. They can sneak up, and they can decimate things if you get them on the right units, and they're a really cool unit, and they're probably about right. I had Storm Vermin with Halberd at 21. They actually finished down at 23, a -2. The Wildwood Rangers, I had at 22. They finished up at 17, so +5. Wildwood Rangers, I know I said it was a real guess. I didn't know where they were going to show up. Now, the Azrai Spears I knew were not very good. But, I had them at 23, and they ended up at 24. And then I had the Giant Slayers at 24, and they ended up all the way up at number 19, all the way up. But it turns out that armor piercing in this game is such a powerful mechanic in terms of this game really is skewed towards armor piercing in a major way, that the dwarfs, the regular Slayers, finished last in the 601 to 900, which I figured they would do very poorly in an infantry engagement, and they did. These guys did not finish last, purely because they have that great armor piercing, and they have like an immense anti-large at 30, but they still have good weapon strength and melee attack just in an infantry fight. So I still wouldn't put them up against infantry. They lost in the fights. They lost atrocious amounts of gold. It's some of those fights. Like if I look, oh my god, against the Blades. Where's Chosen, Vestigors, Sisters, Blackguard, Ironbreakers. Yeah, Giant Slayers lost 347 gold in that fight. They lost like some crazy amount against the Clan Rats, I think, as well. Sisters, Harganeth, Blackguard. Yeah, Giant Slayers. Oh, only 116 gold in that fight. Maybe it was the Marauders that they lost all their gold. Um, Probably. I'll just quickly squeak down. Yeah, but no, the Berserkers rather. Berserkers, yeah, Giant Slayers. Yeah, they lost 478 gold against the Berserkers. It's like crazy. Uh, Anyways, so I'm going to do a bit of back testing to show a few units, and this doesn't work for every unit. It's not like this is a power ranking. This is not a power ranking. This is a value ranking. But in general, two like units that are the same price should rank out approximately where they show up here. So I have hammers showing up at number 6, and I have the Marauder Champions with Great Weapons showing up 15. So the hammer should beat the Marauder Champions with Great Weapons. They're both 1,100 gold. So I've got that that fight set up. They're both 1,100 gold. They're both Great Weapon infantry. So we'll start that battle just so I show a little back testing, because I always like to do this. This is sort of the sniff test, as we call it, you know, in applied science. You know, there is no such thing as a sniff test in, you know, the pure sciences. But in applied science, we do the sniff test. Just say, does this smell right? Does this seem correct? Or are there some back testing we can do to just check and see that the things that we did or the assumptions that we made sort of make sense? And you can see the hammers are winning right off the get, and now they're kind of going to an even amount. The hammers are pulling away a little bit, not much. I mean, it is pretty close. But the hammers think they're winning, and the Marauder Champions think they're winning. I always think that's weird. But the hammers definitely think they're winning. The Marauder Champions with Great Weapons have gotten a chevron. The hammers have gotten the chevron. You know, if I ran this fight 20 times, you know, the Marauder Champions, do they win 2 out of 20? I don't know, 3 out of 20. But there they go. Hammers win, and they have 1,800 out of 6,900 hit points left. And they got 46 versus 67 kills. So that's sort of around what you would expect. You would think the Marauder Champions with Great Weapons would win that sometimes, but most of the time the hammers should win that, because A, they're the same price, but all this testing we did, we rank ordered them, and since they're sort of like units at the same exact cost, I would expect the unit that pulls the most value should win that fight. And you could see they both have the same amount of numbers as well, and the hammers they have 29 remaining as opposed to 8, but you look at the losses, and they're definitely doing better. You know, not a massive amount. Like, this was actually, aside from being stratified nicely, this is actually tighter, not, you know, fairly tight. So the next unit I wanted to look at is Stormvermin with Halberds, because they're 1,000, versus Wildwood Rangers, because they're also 1,000. Now, Wildwood Rangers finished at rank 17, the Stormvermin with Halberds at rank 23. So I would expect the Wildwood Rangers to win that. So if we go and we get Wildwood Rangers at 1,000, and they're both sort of anti-large. I know the Wildwood Rangers are not precisely anti-large, but they have this Forest Stalker, which gives them this ability when they're in the woods. They get 12 bonus, plus 12 bonus versus large, and charge defense versus large. And they sort of they're not exactly an anti-large unit because of melee attack. But anyways, we'll just get them up against the Stormvermin with Halberds to show really the Wildwood Rangers should do quite well in that. And where do we got Skaven? All right. And again, all of these don't work all the time. That's not what I'm saying in this back testing. This is sort of the sniff test. Do like units sort of show up about where I'd expect them? What this does is this gives me a way to make predictions, right? And I would predict that the hammers finishing at 6 being the same price as as a armor piercing unit finishing 15th should generally win. So I can make a prediction, even though in all this testing they didn't face off against each other. And that's the same with the Wildwood Rangers and the Stormvermin. They're both sort of armor piercing kind of anti-large, and they're both at 1,000 gold, so I would expect that the Wildwood Rangers would beat the Stormvermin with Halberds. They're both 1,000 gold, because in the testing they showed themselves to have more value in more fights. So now my model is giving me a chance to make some predictions, and so I would expect the Wildwood Rangers would win. you know, against the Storm Vermin Halberd. Even though the Wild Rangers have 75 models, Storm Vermin have 120. We'll let them go to town. And they immediately get swarmed. But the Wildwood Rangers think they're winning right away, right? And, you know, the Storm Vermin with Halberds do have the advantage of having 120 models. But now you can see the Wildwood Rangers are definitely pulling away. You know, they're doing pretty good on this fight. And it looks like they're going to win this actually quite handily. You know, so this testing is not always going to be perfect. And the back testing is not always going to be perfect. But you can see the model predicts the Wildwood Rangers would generally do better and pull more value to the Storm Vermin with Halberds, and they sort of are like units, and they do. Hooray! All right, so I'll get that done. Yeah, 23 kills to 100 is not really what I would expect, but it's giving me something to at least guess at. I did look for some other ones that they're not really nice and easy to sort of let the fight. I guess we could look at Depth Guard at 1200 versus, well, Depth Guard and Ironbreakers are very close to each other. I would expect the Ironbreakers to win, but they're really, really close. They're sort of like units. Like when we get to a unit like Chosen should win against something that was a little higher. I'm not going to go through everything. I already went through and got a few units, but that's sort of the thing that the model, that the testing has given us sort of a layout and a set of results that we can sort of make some predictions off of. And we can also understand them, and now we can start to add context to this in terms of the faction. So when I'm talking about things like the Harganeth Executioners having murderous mastery, and even beyond that, we can talk about it in terms of matchups, where I could say, okay, Storm Vermin don't match up well against, or the Skaven don't match up well against the Dowie, because units like Storm Vermin and Storm Vermin with Halberd, Storm Vermin don't have armor piercing, Dowie have armor, and Storm Vermin with Halberds are an armor piercing anti-large unit that are really crappy in an infantry engagement. So the infantry fight at the higher levels is going to favor the Dowie big time. Not that the Skaven can't do things in other areas in the fight, but that sort of gives me an understanding this, where I would say, now if I'm playing against the Dowie, maybe I might bring a couple of these units, but I'd be awfully careful, because they're just not going to perform that great against the Dowie would be from my guess. And they don't, right? Really, they don't. So anyways, that's sort of the results. That's the back testing. That's the discussion. Here is my initial guess. I was off by an average of 2.83 ranks, which I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. I've never done it before, and I've never tried it. So I will try to do that if I do a big set of testing. I doubt I'm going to do a giant set of tests like this for anytime soon. When I thought about doing this, I love infantry. That's part of why I love the dwarfs. And even when I played Medieval 2 Total War, I mean, I preferred foot knights to mounted. And I mean, I just like infantry fights, and it's really satisfying to me to watch these go. So I don't know if I'm going to do another test of sort of this scope. I might do some sub-tests, or look at the Dowie in a matchup, or this unit versus that. I really don't know, because this testing was, I want to say, at least 150 hours to do all the testing and to make the videos and present the videos and do all this kind of stuff. Maybe 200. It was a lot. But I enjoyed it. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I love this stuff. I would be doing this whether I'm doing YouTube or not. I'm just saying I might not do another test with this sort of scale again for a while, because it was quite a bit of testing. And I kind of want to look at anti-large units, and I kind of want to look at ranged units, and I'm open to suggestions. Absolutely. I love comments. I love hearing from you guys all the time. Comments are my very favorite thing about doing this. And but I kind of I've been talking to Aurora Boss, and I think him and I are going to do a bit of a series, and I have some other games I got to get to, and this next month is going to be crazy busy. February is a really, really busy month for me, so I don't even know how much time I'm going to actually be able to get on to make any videos, to be perfectly honest. Maybe it'll work out and I'll be able to make a bunch, but I I'm really looking forward to the Make War Not Love. I think they finished the Fest Egg beta now, so they could actually have a nice download load for the Make War Not Love, because they've worked on something clearly, or else they would have saved this. Because I at first thought that we were going to get nothing for Make War Not Love. I thought they were going to get nothing. They were just going to hold off the Fest Egg update, and that was going to sort of be the Make War Not Love update. So there's something coming. They haven't said anything. So I think in 2 weeks we got something fun. So who knows what it's going to look like, and what it's going to be, but it should be interesting, and I'm really looking forward to it. I will also say, this is sort of an aside. Video's over now, folks. I mean, I'm just yammering on because I don't know when I'm going to sit in front of this mic again and sort of chat about some things that are coming up. But, for example, in the Fest Egg update, it's interesting is that the zombie pirate deckhand mobs and the zombie pirate deckhand mobs with polearms both got -2 health. And, when I look at that, I'm like, holy crap. Like, those units were already bad against the Dowie, so now they've gotten worse. So, in fact, what they've done with the Fest Egg update is they might have nerfed the Vampire Coast a little bit against some of their matchups, but they have nerfed them a ton against the Dowie. Like Dowie, that's one of the most frustrating things. Not only frustrating, it's not really frustrating to play them because you win every game. I mean, you win most games. I mean, I don't know if I've ever lost against them, even in testing. But now it'll be even harder for them, because that's one of the things they can do against the Dowie is muck them up with those units. But if the Dowie can kill them that much faster because they all have -2 health, it's just going to make that matchup even more dominant. Like, I don't know if it's the most dominant matchup in the game. I would be curious to hear your thoughts on what the most dominant matchups in the game are, but it's got to be up there. Like one of the more dominant matchups in the game are actually Dark Elves versus Dwarfs. I don't even know how you win that matchup against a good player with a good build. Let me put that caveat in there. I mean, you're always going to have a hard time beating better players, but I mean, there are some truly abusive builds that the Dark Elves can bring against the Dowie. And I don't mean abusive in terms of unfair, like some sort of strange kite build. I mean abusive in terms like a fair build, but there's nothing you can do about it. Like the build that I have against the Vampire Coast in the Vampire Coast video I did, the final build that I had, it's a fair build, tournament legal, and there's nothing the Vampire Coast can do against it. Nothing at all that I can think of. I mean, maybe eventually when I get together with the Roker boss, if we explore that matchup, he'll have an interesting build we can go through. But I know I've already asked him to go through some of the harder builds, and it should be interesting. So just as a little bit of an update, the Roker boss and I are hopefully going to get together soon. Like, he's world class, top 20 in the world. Like, he's amazing. Like, he's he's just one of the best players in the world in terms of his mechanics, and he enjoys playing the dwarfs, and I love watching his dwarf games because they're so satisfying for me, because he's also a very careful player and a very tight, kind of a slow push forward, manage a situation and deal with it, and he has a very nice tight formations, and he plays all the factions. I don't think there's any he doesn't play. And so hopefully we make a series out of what we've been talking about, and it can sort of be long term, and where we're going to call it dwarf training. So he's got a series called Academy. So if you go to his channel and subscribe, his Academy series is great. He does online battles and he talks about them, and frick is he good. Like, he is so good to watch, especially if you're a dwarf main and you love the dwarfs and you love the dwarf playstyle. His game is for you. I watch all of his battles. I love them. And so this will be really fun for me, because I'm just like an average general, and I'm old, and I'm pretty shit, and I have a lot to learn in this game in terms of the mechanics. So it'll be sort of like dwarf training, where we will explore a matchup, and hopefully that works out. We've just been tossing the idea back and forth. So far we haven't done anything, but I think that'll be super fun, and I really am looking forward to it. So love to hear from you guys on that in terms of what you'd like to see us do. I mean, I know it's I like I though and two I like hearing suggestions and we can suggest it for testing. I don't always do them. That doesn't mean I don't like the suggestion. It never ever means that. It's just, you know how it is when you're doing this kind of stuff. You gotta sort of, it just gotta grab you and you want to go do it. So anyways, that's the whole video. That's the summary of this testing. I really love the way these units stratified. I like the whole process of doing an initial guess before we did any testing and streaming all the testing. I had great fun chatting with everybody and, you know, sort of talking about little things within the matchups and everything else like that. And hopefully I will be able to get on and be making some videos, but probably not. I mean, probably not a lot of videos in February, because I just have so much on the go. I mean, got to move and got to do a whole bunch of stuff like that. But anyways, hope you found that interesting, and I will see you soon.